The alien marketplace was alive with strange sounds and smells, glowing under the dim orange light of twin moons. Merchants shouted in different languages. Holographic signs flashed prices. And cages lined the narrow streets inside those cages. Beings from different worlds sat or stood, their faces empty, their eyes dull. Humans were rare here, and when one appeared, everyone noticed. Daniel kept his hood low, moving through the crowd. He was not here for pleasure, not for gambling, and not for the strange alien drinks. He was here because he was curious, too curious for his own good. People had told him about this street. It's the one where living beings were rented for the night. It disgusted him, but something in him wanted to see if it was true. He passed by cages of tall, scaled aliens, small furry ones with big eyes, and some that looked almost human. Then he stopped, his steps slowing. In a glass-fronted display, sitting on the floor with her head down, was a girl unlike the others. Her skin had a faint silver tone, almost shining in the moonlight. Her hair fell like a dark curtain over her face, and her hands rested quietly on her knees. She didn't move, didn't try to attract customers, didn't even look up when people walked by. "Cheap one," a deep voice said beside him. Daniel turned to see the shopkeeper, a thick-bodied alien with green skin and sharp teeth. "No. One wants her, she's broken." The shopkeeper continued, "Doesn't talk much, doesn't smile, no fun." Daniel looked at her again, wondering what broken meant here. How much? He asked before thinking. The shopkeeper grinned, showing rows of small pointed teeth. "For you, human? Half price." Daniel almost walked away. But something kept his feet in place. Maybe it was the way she didn't look at him, didn't even seem to hope. In every other cage, the beings stared at potential buyers, eyes full of hunger or fear. But this girl seemed empty. "I'll take her," Daniel said, surprising himself. The shopkeeper laughed and waved for him to follow. Minutes later, after some quick credits transfer, the glass door opened and the girl stepped out slowly. Up close, Daniel saw faint marks on her wrists, like old bruises. She kept her head down, walking quietly behind him as he led her away. When they reached his rented room in a quiet part of the city, Daniel opened the door and stepped aside. She entered without a word, standing in the middle of the room as if waiting for instructions. "You can sit," Daniel said, pulling out a chair. She didn't move. Finally, she looked at him for the first time. Her eyes were unlike anything he had seen before, a deep silver that seemed to hold both storms and silence. Her voice was soft when she spoke. "Will you hurt me?" The question caught him off guard. "No," Daniel said quickly. "I won't hurt you." She studied his face for a long moment, as if trying to decide if he was lying. Then she moved to the chair and sat down, her hands folded in her lap. Daniel poured her a drink from the small bottle on the table and pushed it toward her. She took it slowly, sipping without looking away from him. They didn't talk much. Daniel asked her name, and after a pause, she said, "Leora." It suited her, soft, quiet, and strange. Instead of asking him what he wanted, she sat quietly, listening as he told her about Earth, about oceans and green fields she had never seen. Sometimes her lips curved slightly, almost like a smile, but mostly she was silent. Hours passed. Daniel realized he wasn't interested in what the marketplace usually sold. He just wanted her to feel safe for one night when it was time to sleep. He offered her the bed. She shook her head, curling up on the small couch instead, as if afraid the bed wasn't truly for her. Before drifting to sleep, she whispered so quietly he almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Something about her voice stayed in his mind. He didn't know why, but he already felt like one night wouldn't be enough. Outside, the alien city buzzed with life, but inside, the small room felt like another world, one where a human and a broken alien girl shared a quiet night that would change both of their lives. The next day, Daniel walked through the alien marketplace again. The twin moons had set, replaced by the pale glow of the system's sun. But the streets were still busy. Merchants shouted, holograms flashed, and the smell of strange spices mixed with the metallic temps of machinery. Daniel told himself he was just passing through, just curious, but his eyes searched for one thing only. He found the shop with the glass cages. Leora was there, sitting in the same place. Head lowered, hands still. It was as if the previous night had never happened. But when her eyes flicked up for a brief second and met his, something passed between them. Recognition. The shopkeeper noticed Daniel and grinned. Back already? She's still here, always here. Daniel tried to sound casual. I'll rent her again. The shopkeeper laughed. Humans are strange. Pay for the same girl twice. But the alien tapped at a screen, took Daniel's credits, and unlocked the glass door. Leora stepped out slowly, her eyes glancing once at Daniel, as if to confirm he was real. She followed him through the noisy streets without a word. Back in his small rented room, Daniel poured 2 drinks. He sat in the chair while she stood near the door. You can sit. Leora, he said. She hesitated, then took the same seat she had used last night. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers curling slightly. I wanted to ask you something, Daniel began. Why are you here? Her silver eyes studied him for a long time before she answered. My village, she said softly. It was burned. Taken. We were captured. Her voice trembled on the last word. Daniel leaned forward. Captured. By who? She looked away, her hair falling forward to hide her face. Traders. They sell us. Daniel's stomach tightened. He had known. The market was wrong, but hearing it in her voice made it worse. You've been here long? He asked. Too long, she whispered. I don't remember freedom. He noticed faint scars on her wrists now. Some were thin and white old, others still red and healing. It made him want to ask more, but he could see how tense she was. Instead, he changed the subject. Do you have family? She shook her head slowly. Gone. For a while, neither of them spoke. The quiet between them was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Daniel realized she was watching him now. Not with fear, but with a kind of searching, as if she was trying to figure out why he was different from the others. Why do you come back? She asked suddenly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp. Daniel thought about lying, but decided against it. Because I want to, he said. Because I don't like seeing you in there. Her lips pressed together, her expression unreadable. You shouldn't be kind, she said at last. It makes me worthless to them. Daniel frowned. Worthless? She nodded. Here, a girl must smile, talk sweet, do as told. If she is quiet, she is no good for business. Her words cut into him like cold metal. Worthless to them meant valuable to him. He didn't say it, but he thought it. After a moment, she leaned forward slightly, her voice so low it was almost a breath. Kindness is dangerous here. Daniel understood the market thrived on control and fear, not care, and yet he couldn't stop himself from being kind to her. Maybe it was foolish, maybe it was dangerous. But it was too late. They talked a little more about the stars outside this system, about Earth's blue skies, about foods she had never tasted. Sometimes she listened with a small tilt of her head, as if imagining the things he described. When the night grew late, Daniel realized he didn't want her to leave. But he knew the deal. One night at a time, as he walked her back through the streets, he felt the weight of something building inside him. It wasn't just pity, and it wasn't just anger at the traders. It was a quiet, stubborn thought. I could take her away from here. When they reached the shop, she paused at the door. Her silver eyes met his again. And for a moment, the noise of the marketplace seemed far away. "I wish I could stay," she whispered. Then she stepped inside. The glass door sliding shut between them. Daniel stood there for a long moment, watching her sit down in the same spot as before. The shopkeeper gave him a smug smile. "See you tomorrow, human?" Daniel didn't answer, but deep down, he knew the answer already. Daniel didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Leora's silver gaze and heard her whisper, "I wish I could stay." It replayed over and over in his mind. He had met many people in his travels, but none had left such a deep mark after such little time. He sat on the small couch of his rented room, staring at the dim glow from the street outside. His hands tightened into fists as he remembered the bruises on her wrists, the way she never asked for anything. He thought about her words, "Kindness is dangerous here." If that was true, then leaving her in that glass cage wasn't just cruel. It was a slow death. By morning, Daniel had made up his mind he was going to buy her. Not for one night, not for a week, forever. It was a dangerous thought, and he knew it. Buying her would make him a target for whoever controlled that marketplace. But he couldn't shake the feeling that if he walked away, she would disappear forever. He spent the first hours of daylight asking quiet questions around the market. Some aliens laughed at him when he asked how much a permanent contract for a companion would cost. Others warned him not to get involved. One old trader, missing half his teeth, leaned in close and muttered, "If you free her, you take her owner's pride." And that's worth more than credits to some people. Daniel understood this wasn't just a business deal. It was a power game. Still, he went back to the shop. The green-skinned keeper was behind the counter, tapping on a holoscreen. "Back for your quiet little pet." The keeper smirked. "I want to buy her," Daniel said, his voice firm. The alien froze, then slowly grinned. "Buy her." "That's a big jump from renting human. How much?" Daniel asked. The keeper tapped a few numbers into the screen, and a price appeared. It was more than Daniel had expected. He could pay it, but it would leave him with little for travel or supplies. The keeper leaned forward, his sharp teeth gleaming. "Why waste your money? She's damaged goods, can't even smile right." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Name your price," he repeated. The keeper laughed. "You humans are strange." "Fine, pay now. Take her today. No refunds when she turns out useless." Daniel left the shop without her for now. He needed to get the credits together and hide some of his trail. If the keeper was smart, he might try to raise the price or claim Daniel hadn't paid enough. He knew he had to move fast. That night, he sat in his room again, staring out at the alien city. He thought about what it would mean to have her with him, the risks, the danger, the constant eyes watching. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered her quiet voice asking if he would hurt her, and the trust that flickered in her eyes when he said no. By morning, he had transferred his savings into a local credit chip. He walked to the marketplace early, before the crowds filled the narrow streets. The air smelled of rain on hot stone, and the sky was streaked with pale orange light. He reached the shop before most stalls had opened. The keeper was there, surprised to see him so soon. "You again?" The alien chuckled. "Can't live without her, can you?" Daniel placed the credit chip on the counter, full amount. "Now release her to me." The keeper picked up the chip, scanned it, and his grin widened. "Done," he said. Tapping at the holoscreen to complete the transfer, a legal contract appeared, binding Leora's ownership to Daniel. The keeper slid a small data card across the counter. "She's yours now. Do what you want with her." Daniel turned toward the glass cage. Leora sat in her usual spot, head lowered. When the door slid open, she looked up, confusion in her eyes. "How many nights?" she asked quietly. Daniel stepped closer, his voice gentle. "Every night. Forever, if you want." For the first time since he'd met her, her lips trembled into the smallest smile. Not a performance smile, not for business, but real, her. Eyes shone, and she reached out, touching his hand with trembling fingers. Daniel felt something deep inside him settle. They walked out together, leaving the shop behind. But he didn't see the way the keeper's eyes narrowed, or the shadowy figure who stepped into the street to follow them. The alien sun was higher now, casting pale gold light over the narrow streets. Daniel walked beside Leora, their pace steady but unhurried. She still didn't fully understand what had happened. Her fingers clutched the thin strap of the small bag he had given her. Her silver eyes kept moving between his face and the crowd, as if searching for a trap. "You're free, Daniel," told her again, his voice calm. She blinked at him, as though the word didn't make sense. "No one is free here," she whispered. "You are," he said firmly, "as long as you're with me." They passed through the outer market, where the noise was softer and the air smelled of roasted grain. Daniel wanted to believe they could walk out unnoticed, but in the corner of his eye, he saw movement, a shadow that kept pace with them through the crowd. He didn't turn his head, but his instincts tightened. Someone was following. When they reached the small room Daniel had been renting, Leora stopped just inside the doorway. Her gaze swept the place as if memorizing it. She placed the bag down gently on the bed and turned toward him. "You spent your credits on me," she said quietly. "It's not about credits," Daniel replied. "It's about you." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she took a slow breath, like she was testing if the air tasted different outside the glass cage. "Do you regret it already?" she asked, her voice without emotion. Daniel shook his head, not for a second. They shared a simple meal, alien bread, and a stew that smelled faintly of spices Daniel couldn't name. She ate, slowly, still cautious, like the food might be taken away at any moment. When she finished, she leaned back, her eyes scanning him. "What happens now?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. "Now? I keep you safe." Her lips parted slightly at his words. But before she could answer, a soft sound came from outside the door, a faint shuffle of feet. Daniel stood quietly, his hand resting on the small sidearm he kept near the bed. He moved to the door and cracked it open just enough to see a shadow slip away down the corridor. When he closed it again, his jaw was tight. "We're leaving," he said. Leora tilted her head, leaving the room. "Leaving this city," Daniel replied. "I don't trust the keeper. He's not going to let this go." She didn't argue, but her eyes darkened. "They'll try to take me back," she said simply. "Then they'll have to go through me," Daniel answered. He packed quickly a small bag of clothes, his weapon, and the credit chip that now felt dangerously light. Leora stood by the window, watching the streets below. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "You could walk away from this? No one would blame you. I would blame me," Daniel said, without looking up. "Every day." They slipped out through the back streets, avoiding the main road. The sky had turned a deeper shade of gold, and the hum of the city was growing louder. Every time Daniel glanced over his shoulder, he caught glimpses of shapes moving in the distance too far to see clearly. But always there, at the edge of the marketplace, they passed a row of traders who eyed them with suspicion. One of them, an old alien woman with copper skin, called out softly to Leora in a language Daniel didn't know. Leora paused, listening, then shook her head and kept walking. When Daniel asked what she said, Leora replied, "She told me to hide before it's too late." They reached a small transport dock where intercity shuttles waited. Daniel bought 2 tickets for the next departure. Paying in cash to avoid digital tracking, they boarded, finding seats near the back. Leora sat by the window, her hands folded in her lap. Daniel scanned the passengers. No one looked directly at them. But his instincts still screamed danger. As the shuttle rose into the sky, Leora finally looked at him. "I don't understand why you're doing this," she said softly. Daniel met her eyes. "Because you're worth it." Her silver gaze softened for a moment, and then she looked away. Outside, the city shrank beneath them. But Daniel knew the trouble was far from over. Somewhere back in that marketplace, the keeper would be realizing his property was gone for good. And Daniel suspected the man wasn't the type to let a debt or an insult go unpaid. The first move was his, but the next one, it would belong to the keeper. The shuttle ride took them far from the crowded marketplace and into the open skies. Below them, the city stretched like a patchwork of lights and shadows, slowly fading into rolling hills and strange-colored forests for the first time since he had met her. Daniel saw Leora looking out the window with something close to curiosity. "You've never been outside that city?" "Keys stay?" Daniel asked quietly. She shook her head, silver eyes reflecting the sky. "I was taken there, and I never left," she said. Her voice was calm. But Daniel heard the unspoken truth. She had been a prisoner. Even when the cage was made of glass instead of bars, when they landed in a smaller, quieter town, Daniel found them a room above. A small cafe. It was nothing fancy, a clean bed, a small table, a view of the street below. But to Leora, it might as well have been a palace. She stood in the doorway, hesitant to enter until Daniel nodded. "It's yours," he said. "Mine," she repeated, as if the word felt strange in her mouth. "Yes," Daniel smiled. "Ours." The first night, she slept curled on the edge of the bed, her hands close to her chest. By the second night, she had relaxed enough to stretch out fully. She still startled at loud noises, but Daniel noticed the way her shoulders were no longer always tense. Every small change felt like a victory. In the mornings, Daniel would go downstairs and buy breakfast from the cafe owner. Leora began joining him, sitting at a corner table while he ordered. The first time he told her she could choose anything, she looked confused. "No one ever asks me to choose," she said. "Well, I do," Daniel replied. She ordered something. Simple, warm bread with sweet fruit paste, and Daniel saw the smallest spark of enjoyment when she tasted it. Days passed, and the quiet between them began to feel comfortable. Leora started asking questions about Earth, about human customs, about why he had traveled so far from his home. Daniel told her about the oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see, the forests that sang with wind, the cities that never slept. Her eyes would follow his words like they were stories from another universe. One afternoon, they walked through the town's small market. This one was nothing like the one they had left. No cages, no shouting traders selling lives. Instead, stalls sold colorful fabrics, alien fruits, and strange trinkets. Leora stopped at a table with a small glass pendant shaped like a star. She touched it lightly but didn't pick it up. Daniel bought it for her without asking when he handed it to her. She held it in her palm for a long moment. "It's the first thing anyone has given me," she whispered, but even in this quieter place, Daniel knew the danger hadn't gone away. Sometimes, when they walked the streets, he caught sight of someone turning away too quickly, a tall figure at the end of an alley, a shadow slipping into a shop when they passed. He didn't tell Leora, not wanting to fill her new moments of peace with fear. But at night, he checked the locks twice. The more time they spent together, the more Daniel noticed the change in her. She laughed once, a short, surprised sound when he told her a clumsy joke. She began sitting closer to him when they talked, her silver eyes no longer guarded. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in deep gold and purple, she said, "When you look at me, you don't see what they saw." "No," Daniel said, "I see you." Her gaze lingered on him, searching. "Then I don't know what to do with that," she admitted. "Just live," he replied, "one day at a time." But peace was fragile. Late one night, when the cafe downstairs had closed and the street was quiet, Daniel heard footsteps outside their door. They stopped, then moved away, slow and deliberate. He stood in the dark for a long time, listening until the sound faded. The keeper's reach was long, and Daniel had no doubt that sooner or later they would have to face it. For now, though Leora was safe, and every moment of her slowly learning to trust, to smile, to feel like a person again, it was worth every risk. The quiet town had begun to feel almost safe. Leora no longer hesitated to step outside, and Daniel enjoyed watching her discover small pieces of freedom, tasting a new fruit, touching fabrics at the market, sitting in the sun. Without fear, but safety in a place like this was an illusion, and illusions always broke. It started one morning when Daniel went down to the cafe for breakfast. The owner, a round-bellied alien with kind eyes, leaned in close. "Two men were asking about you last night," he whispered. "They didn't order food. They wanted to know if a human and a silver-eyed girl were staying here." Daniel's stomach tightened. "What did you tell them?" "That I'd never seen you," the owner said, "but they didn't believe me." "Be careful." Daniel took the tray of food upstairs, his mind racing when he entered the room. Leora was sitting by the window, humming softly. She looked at him, sensing something in his face. "What's wrong?" He hesitated, then told her. Her expression didn't change, but her fingers gripped the edge of the chair. "I told you they wouldn't let me go," she said quietly. For the rest of the day, Daniel kept his eyes on every corner, every doorway. The small town suddenly felt smaller. Every face a possible threat that night. He pushed a chair against the door before they went to sleep. It didn't help. In the middle of the night, a faint knock came at the door. Not the kind of knock a guest makes. Slow, deliberate, testing. Daniel reached for his weapon and signaled Leora to stay quiet. The knock came again, followed by a voice muffled through the wood. "Open up, human. We just want to talk." Daniel didn't answer. A shadow moved under the gap in the door. Someone was standing too close. He took a slow step back, waiting. Then the door rattled as someone tried the handle. "Go to the back," Daniel whispered to Leora, pointing toward the small balcony. Her eyes widened, but she obeyed. The door shook harder now, then stopped. Footsteps moved away down the hall. But Daniel knew it wasn't over. By morning, Daniel had made his decision. "We have to leave," he told her. "They'll follow," she said. "Then I'll make it harder for them." They packed quickly. Daniel paid the cafe owner triple for the trouble, thanking him for his silence. Then they slipped into the streets before sunrise. The early light turned the town's buildings gold. But to Daniel, it felt cold. He could feel eyes on them, even when he saw no one. They made it to the outskirts where the small transport station was. Daniel bought 2 tickets for the long-distance freighter headed toward the outer colonies. Far from the marketplace's reach, or so he hoped. They boarded quietly. Finding seats at the very back, Leora sat with her hood pulled low, her silver eyes hidden in shadow halfway through the trip. Daniel saw them 2 figures entering the passenger area. Scanning faces, one was tall and thin, the other broad-shouldered with a scar across his chin. They didn't look like traders. They looked like hunters. Daniel's pulse quickened. He leaned toward Leora. "Don't look up. Just follow me when I move." They slipped out of their seats and into the narrow service corridor. Daniel guided her toward the freight section of the ship, where stacks of crates made a twisting path. They found a small space between 2 tall containers and crouched there. The hum of the engines filled the silence between them. Leora whispered, "If they catch me, you should run." "Not happening," he said. "They'll hurt you too," she insisted. "Let them." "Try," he replied, his voice hard. The footsteps came closer, the sound of boots on metal. Daniel gripped his weapon tighter. If they were found here, there would be no talking, only fighting. He glanced at Leora, saw the fear in her eyes, and felt his resolve harden. The footsteps stopped. Voices murmured, too quiet to understand, then faded. Daniel waited several long minutes before moving. When they finally stepped out, The freight area was empty. But he knew the hunters would not give up easily. By the time the freighter reached its destination, Daniel had a new plan forming. If they were going to survive, they couldn't just run forever. They would need to face this threat head-on. The freighter's docking alarm echoed through the metal corridors. Daniel tightened the strap on his bag and glanced at Leora. She was calm on the surface, but her silver eyes kept flicking toward the exit doors. They both knew the hunters could be waiting on the other side. "This is it," Daniel said quietly. Leora nodded. "Whatever happens, I'm not going back." Her voice was steady. And Daniel felt a swell of pride. The quiet, broken girl he had first met now carried steel in her words. The docking doors hissed open, and the crowd of passengers began to spill into the port. Stationed, Daniel kept Leora close, weaving through the mass of travelers. They almost reached the outer gates when a voice called out, "There they are." The crowd shifted, and two figures broke through the tall, thin hunter and his broad-shouldered partner. People stepped aside. Sensing trouble, Daniel turned to face them, his hand moving to his weapon. "This is your last chance," the tall hunter said. "Hand her over and walk away alive." Leora stepped closer to Daniel, her hand brushing his arm. "No," Daniel said, his voice like stone. The hunters moved in, but Daniel was ready. The first shot rang out, not from his weapon, but from a small pistol Leora had hidden in her sleeve. The tall hunter jerked back, a burn mark smoking across his shoulder. The broad one lunged forward, swinging a heavy blade. Daniel sidestepped, grabbing the man's arm and slamming him into the metal wall. The fight was quick but brutal. Daniel's blade cut across the man's forearm. Forcing him to drop the weapon, Leora fired again, hitting the floor near the man's feet, making him stumble back. The crowd erupted in chaos, running in every direction. Daniel grabbed Leora's hand. "Move." They sprinted through the outer gates, weaving between crates and cargo loaders. Shouts followed them, but the noise faded as they reached the far end of the port. Where a line of small private ships waited, Daniel spotted one with an open hatch and a bored-looking mechanic leaning against the side. "How much for a fast takeoff?" Daniel asked, tossing a handful of credits. The mechanic looked at the credits, then at Daniel and Leora. "Fast enough to leave trouble behind?" he asked. "Fast enough to leave this planet behind?" Daniel said. The mechanic grinned and waved him in. Inside, the ship was small but clean. The hum of the engine started almost instantly, and within minutes, the port was shrinking below them. Leora sat in the co-pilot seat, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel looked at her. "You?" "Okay," she nodded. "I'm okay." Because of you, they sat in silence for a while, watching the stars stretch as the ship prepared for jump. Finally, Leora spoke. "When I was in that cage, I thought no one would ever see me. The real me. I saw you," Daniel said. Her silver eyes glistened, "and you didn't walk away." The jump to hyperspace came with a burst of light. Beyond the window, the stars blurred into glowing trails. For the first time, there was no fear in Leora's face, only wonder. "What? Now?" she asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "Now, we go wherever we want." She reached for his hand, her fingers curling around his. "I was yours for one night," she said softly. "But now, you're mine forever." Daniel's chest tightened at her words, not from surprise, but from the quiet certainty that she meant them. The mechanic's voice came over the intercom. "Next stop's a free colony. No slavers. No bounty laws." Daniel glanced at Leora. "Sounds like a good place to start." She nodded, her gaze fixed on the endless horizon ahead. For the first time, the future felt wide open outside. The ship cut through the endless black, leaving the past far behind. Inside, in the small glow of the cockpit, a human and an alien girl sat side by side, not as owner and property, not as rescuer and rescued, but as two people who had chosen each other. Whatever dangers still lingered out there, they would face them together, forever.